Harry Potter, Chapter 13, Nicholas Flamel. Dumbledore had convinced Harry not to go looking for the mirror artist again, and for the rest of Christmas holiday, the invisibility cloak stayed folded on the bottom of his trunk. Harry wished he could forget that he had seen in the mirror as easily, but he couldn't. He started having a nightmare. Over and over again, he dreamed about his parents disappearing in a flash of green light, while a high voice crackled with laughter. You see, Dumbledore was right. That mirror could drive you mad, said Ron, when Harry told him about these days. Hermione, who came back the day before term started, took a different views of things. She was torn between horror at the idea of Harry being out of bed, roaming the school 3 nights in a row, if Flitch had caught you, and disappointment that he hadn't at least found out who Nicholas Flamel was. They had almost given up hope ever finding Flamel in a library book, even though Harry was still sure he'd read the name somewhere once the term had started. They were back to skimming through books. For 10 minutes during their break, Harry had even less than the other two because Quidditch practice had started again. Wood was working the team harder than ever. Even the endless rain that had replaced the snow couldn't dampen his spirit. The Weasley complained that Wood was becoming fanatic, but Harry was on Wood's side. If they won their match against Hufflepuff, they would overtake Slytherin in the House Championship for the first time in 7 years. Quite apart from wanting to win, Harry found out that he had fewer nightmares when he was tired out after training. Then, during one particularly wet and muddy practice session, Wood gave the team a bad news. He just got very angry with the Weasley, who kept dive-bombing each other and pretending to fall off their broom. "Will you stop messing around?" he yelled. "Will you Not exactly the sort of thing you'll lose as the match," Snape referring this time, and be looking for any excuse to knock point of the Gryffindor. George Weasley really did fall off his broom at these words. "Snape's referring? He spluttered through the mouthful of mud. "When he's ever referred to Quidditch map, he's not going to be fair if we might overtake Slytherin." The rest of the team landed next to George to complain too. "It's not my fault," said Wood. "We've just got to make we play the game clean. Play a clean game, so Snape hasn't got any excuse to pick on us." Which is a very well thought Harry. But he had another reason for not wanting Snape near him while he was playing Quidditch. The rest of the team hung back to talk to each other as usual at the end of the practice, but Harry had headed straight back to the Gryffindor common room, where he had found Ron and Hermione playing chess. Chess was the only thing Hermione ever lost at, something Harry and Ron thought was very good for her. "Don't talk to me for a moment," said Ron when Harry sat down next to him. "I need to He caught sight of Harry's face. "What's the matter with you? You look terrible." Speaking quietly so that no one else would hear, Harry told the other two about Snape's sudden sinister desire to be a Quidditch referee. "Don't play," said Hermione at once. "Say you were ill," said Ron. "Pretend to break your leg," Hermione suggested. "Really break your leg," said Ron. "I can't," said Harry. "There isn't reserve secret. If I back out, Gryffindor can't play at all." At that moment, Neville toppled into the common room. How he had managed to climb through the portrait hole was anyone guess, because his leg had been stuck together with that. They recognized it once as the leg locker curse. He must have had to bunny hop all the way up to the Gryffindor tower. Everyone fell out loud laughing, except Hermione, who leapt up and performed the counter curses. Neville's legs sprang apart, and he got to his feet trembling. "What happened?" Hermione asked him, leading him over to sit with Harry and Ron. "Malfoy," said Neville shakily. "I met him outside the library. He said he'd been looking for someone to practice that on." Go to Professor McGonagall, Hermione urged Neville. Report him. Neville shook his head. I don't want any more trouble, he mumbled. You've got to stand up to him, Neville, said Ron. He's used to walking all over people, but that's no reason to lie down in front of him there and make it easier. There's no need to tell me I'm not brave enough to be in the Gryffindor. Malfoy already done that, Neville choked. Harry felt in the pocket of his robe and pulled out a chocolate frog, the very last one from the box Hermione had given him for Christmas. He gave it to Neville, who looked as though he might cry. You're worth 12, Malfoy, Harry said. The Sorting Hat chose you for Gryffindor, didn't it? Where's Malfoy? In stinking Slytherin. Neville's lips twitched in a weak smile. He unwrapped the frog. Thanks, Harry. I think I'll go to bed. Do you want the card? You collect them? Don't you? As Neville walked away, Harry looked at the famous wizard card. Dumbledore again, he said. He was the first one ever. He gasped. He stared at the back of the card. Then he looked up at Ron and Hermione. I found him, he whispered. I found Flamel. I told you I'd read the name somewhere before. I read on the train coming here. Listen to this. Professor Dumbledore is particularly famous for his defeat of the Dark Wizard Gilliwald in 1945, for the discovery of the 12 use of dragon blood, and his work on alchemy with his partner, Nicholas Flamel. Hermione jumped to her feet. She hadn't looked so excited since they got back to the mark for their very first piece of homework. Stay there, she said, and she sprinted upstairs to the girls' dormitories. Harry and Ron barely had time to exchange mystified look before she was dashing back, an enormous old book in her arms. I never thought to look in here, she whispered excitedly. I got this out of the library weeks ago for a bit of light reading. Light? Said Ron, but Hermione told him to be quiet until she looked something up, and started flicking frantically through the page, muttering to herself. At last, she found what she was looking for. I knew it! Are we allowed to speak yet? Said Ron grumpily. Hermione ignored him. Nicholas Flamel, she whispered dramatically, is the only known mark of Philosopher's Stone. This didn't have quite the effect you'd be expected. The what? Said Harry and Ron. Oh, honestly, don't you two read? Look, read that there. She pushed the book toward them, and Harry and Ron read. The ancient study of alchemy is concerned with the marking of Philosopher's Stone, a legendary substance with an astonishing power. The stone will transform any metal into pure gold. It will also produce the elixir of life, which will make the drinker immortal. There have been many reported Philosopher's Stone over the century, but the only stone currently in existence belonged to Mr. Nicholas Flamel, who noted alchemist and opera lover. Mr. Flamel, who celebrated his 665th birthday last year, enjoyed a quiet life in Devon with his wife, Penelope, 658. See? Said Hermione, when Harry and Ron had finished. The dog must be guarding Flamel Philosopher's Stone. I bet. He asked Dumbledore to keep it safe for him, because they're friends and he knew someone was after it. That's why he wanted the stone moved out of Gridget. A stone that made gold and stop you ever dying, said Harry. No wonder Snape after it. Anyone would want it. And no wonder we couldn't find Flamel in that study of recent development in Wizardy, said Ron. He's not exactly recent if he's 665, is he? Next morning, in defense against the dark art, while copying down different way of treating werewolf bites, Harry and Ron were still discussing what they would do with the Philosopher's Stone. If they had one, it wasn't until Ron and he would buy his own Quidditch team that Harry remembered of Snape in the coming match. I'm going to play, he told Ron and Hermione. If I don't, all the Slytherin will think I'm just too scared to face Snape. I'll show them it's really wipe the smile off their face if we win. Just as long as we're not wiping you off the pitch, said Hermione. As the match drew nearer, however, Harry became more and more nervous. Whatever he told Ron and Hermione, the rest of the team weren't too calm either. The idea of overtaking Slytherin in the House Championship was wonderful. No one had done it in nearly 7 years. But would they allow it with such a biased referee? Harry didn't know whether he was imagining it imagining it or not, but he seemed to keep running into Snape wherever he went. At times, he even wondered whether Snape was following him, trying to catch him on his own potion lesson were turning into sort of weekly torture. Snape was so horrible to Harry. Could Snape possibly know they found out about Philosopher's Stone? Harry didn't know he could. Yet he sometimes had the horrible feeling that Snape could read minds. Harry knew when they wished him good luck outside the changing room next afternoon that Ron and Hermione were wondering. Hmm. Wondering whether they would ever see him alive again. This wasn't what you would call comforting Harry. Comforting. Harry hardly heard a word of Wolf's pep talk as he pulled out his Quidditch robe and picked up his Nimbus 2000. Ron and Hermione, meanwhile, had found a place in a stand next to Neville, who couldn't understand why they looked so grim and worried, or why they had both brought their wand to the match. Little did Harry know that Ron and Hermione had been secretly practicing the leg locker curse. They got the idea from Malfoy using it on Neville, and were ready to use it on Snape if he showed any sign of wanting to hurt Harry. Now, don't forget, it's Locomonster Mortis, Hermione muttered as Ron slipped his wand up his sleeve. I know, Ron snapped. Don't nag. Back in the changing room, Boyle had taken Harry aside. Don't want to pressure you, Potter, but if we ever need an early captive snitch, it's now. Finish the game before Snape can favor Hufflepuff too much. The whole school out there, said Fred Weasley, peering out of the door. Even May, Dumbledore come to watch. Harry hearted a somersault. Dumbledore, he said, dashing to the door to make sure. Fred was right. There was no mistaking that silver beard. Harry could have laughed out loud with relief. He was safe. There was simply no way that Snape would dare try and hurt him if Dumbledore was watching. Perhaps that was why Snape was looking so angry as the team marched on the pitch. Something that Ron noticed too. I've never seen Snape look so mean, he told Hermione. Look, they're off. Ouch. Someone poked Ron in the back of the head. It was Malfoy. Oh, sorry, Weasley. Didn't see you there. Malfoy grinned broadly at Gravy and Goyle. Wonder how long Porter is going to stay on his broom this time. And you want to bet? What about you, Weasley? Ron didn't answer. Snape had just awarded Pufflepuff a penalty because George Weasley had hit a bludger at him. Hermione, who had had her finger crossed in her lap, was squinting fixedly at Harry, was circling the game like a hawk looking for a snitch. You know, how I think they choose people for the Gryffindor team, said Malfoy loudly a few minutes later, as Snape awarded Hufflepuff another penalty for no reason at all. It's people they feel sorry for. See? There's Porter, who got no parents. Then there's the Weasley, who've got no money. You should be on the team, Longbottom. You've got no brain. Neville bright red, but turned into see to face Malfoy. I'm worth 12, you Malfoy, he stammered. Malfoy, Gravy, and Goyle howled with laughter, but Ron, still not daring to take his eyes from the game, said, You tell him, Neville. Longbottom, if rain were gold, you'd be poorer than Weasley, and that's saying something. Ron never already stretched a breaking point with the ancient about Harry. I'm warning you, Malfoy. One more word. Run, said Hermione suddenly. Harry, where? Harry had suddenly gone into a spectacular dive, which drew gasps and cheer from the crowd. Hermione stood up, her crossed finger in her mouth, as Harry streaked toward the ground like a bullet. You're in luck, Weasley. Porter obviously spotted some money on the ground, said Malfoy. Ron snapped. Before Malfoy knew what was happening, Ron was on top of him, wrestling him on the ground. Neville hesitated, then clambered over the back of his seat to help. Come on, Harry, Hermione screamed, leaping onto her seat to watch as Harry sped straight at Snape. She didn't even notice Malfoy and Ron rolling under her seat, or the scruffle and yelp coming in the whirl of fits that Neville, Gravy, and Goyle. Up in the air, Snape turned on the broomstick just in time to see something scarlet shoot past him. Missing him by inch. Next second, Harry had pulled out of the dive, his arm raised in the jump, the snitch clapped his hand, the stand erupted. It had been a record. No one could ever remember the snitch being caught so quickly. Ron, where are you? The game's over. Harry's won. We've won. Gryffindor are in the lead, shrieked Hermione, dancing up and down on their seat and hugging Parvati Paddle in the row up front. Harry jumped off his broom, a foot from the ground. He couldn't believe it. He'd done it. The game was over. It had barely lasted 5 minutes. As Gryffindors came spilling on the pitch, he saw Snape land nearby, white-faced and tight-lipped. Then Harry felt a hand on his shoulder and looked up at Dumbledore's smiling faces. Well done, said Dumbledore quietly, so that only Harry could hear. Nice to see you haven't been worrying about that mirror. Been keeping busy. Excellent. Snape spat bitterly on the ground. Harry left the changing room alone some time later to take his Nimbus 2000 back to the broom shed. He couldn't ever remember feeling happier. He had really done something to be proud of now. No one could say he was a famous name anymore. He was just a famous name anymore. The evening air had never smelled so sweet. He walked over the damp grass, relieving the last hour in his head, which was happy blur. Gryffindor wanting to lift him up on their shoulder, Ron and Hermione in the distance, jumping up and down, Ron cheering through a heavy nosebleed. Harry had reached the shed. He leant against the wooden door and looked up at Hogwarts, with its window glowing red in the setting sun. Gryffindor in the lead. He'd done it. He'd showed Snape. And speaking of Snape, a hooded figure came slowly down the front step of the castle. Clearly, not wanting to be seen, it walked as fast as possible toward the Forbidden Forest. Harry's victory faded from his mind as he watched. He recognized the figure prowling walk. Snape sneaking into the forest while everyone else was at dinner? What was going on? Harry jumped back on his Nimbus 2000 and took off, gliding silently over the castle. He saw Snape enter the forest at a run. He followed. The trees were so thick he couldn't see where Snape had gone. He flew in a circle, lower and lower, brushing the top branch of the tree until he heard voices. He glided toward them and landed noiselessly in the towering beech tree. He climbed carefully along one of the branches, holding tight on his broomstick, trying to see through the leaf. Below the shattered clearing stood Snape. But he wasn't alone. Quirrell was there too. Harry couldn't make out of the look on his face, but he was starting worse than ever. Harry strained to catch what they were saying. Don't know why you wanted to meet here of places, Severus. Oh, I thought we were keeping this private, said Snape, his voice icy. Students are supposed to know about Philosopher's Stone after all. Harry leant forward. Quirrell was mumbling something. Snape interrupted him. Have you found out how to get past that beast of Hagrid yet? But Severus, you don't want me saying me as your enemy, Quirrell, said Snape, taking a step toward him. I don't know what you know perfectly well what I mean. An owl hooted loudly, and Harry nearly fell out of the tree. He steadied himself in the time to hear Snape say, "Your little bit of hocus pocus. I'm waiting. But don't." Very well, Snape cut in. We'll have another little chat soon when you've had time to think things over and decided where your loyalty lies. He drew his cloak over his head and strode out of the clearing. It was almost dark now, but Harry could see Quirrell, standing quite still, although he was petrified. Harry, where have you been? Hermione squeaked. We won! We won! We won! You won! We won! Shouted Ron, thumping Harry on the back, and I gave Malfoy black eyes, and Neville tried to take on Grim and Goyle single-handed. He's still out cold, but Madame Pomfrey said he'll be all right. Talk about showing Slytherin, everyone wanting for you in the common room. We're having a party. Fred and George stole some cake and stuff from the kitchen. Never mind that now, said Harry breathlessly. Let's find an empty room. You wait until you hear this. He made sure Peeves wasn't inside before shutting the door behind them. Then he told them that he'd seen and heard. So we were right. It is the Philosopher's Stone, and Snape trying to force Quirrell to help him get it. He asked if he'd know how to get past Fluffy, and he said something about Quirrell hocus pocus. I reckon there's something other things guarding the stone apart from Fluffy, loads of enchantment probably, and Quirrell would have done some anti-dark art spell which Snape need to break through. So you mean the stone will safe as long as Quirrell stand up to Snape? Said Hermione in alarm. It'll gone by the next Tuesday, said Ron. Quirrell, however, must have been braver than they thought. In the week that followed, he did seem to be getting paler and thinner, but it didn't look as though he had cracked yet. Every time they passed the third floor corridor, Harry and Ron and Hermione would press their ears to the door to check that Fluffy was still growling inside. Snape was sweeping about in his usual bad temper, which surely meant that the stone was still safe. Whenever Harry passed Quirrell these days, he gave him an encouraging sort of smile, and Ron started telling people off for laughing at Quirrell's stutter. Hermione, however, had more on her mind than the philosopher's stone. She had started drawing a revision timetable and color-coding all her notes. Note: Harry and Ron wouldn't have minded, but she kept nagging them to do the same. Hermione, the exam were age away. 10 weeks! Hermione snapped. That's not age. That's like a second to Nicholas Flamel. But we're not 600 years old, Ron reminded her. Anyway, what are you revising for? You already know it all. What am I revising for? Are you mad? You realize we need to pass this exam, okay? So it's been chapter 14. I think we can read chapter 14 today. And yeah. Yeah. Quirrell, however. Okay, where is it? I don't. You realize we need to pass these exams to get into second year. They're very important. I should have started studying a month ago. I don't know what's got into me. Unfortunately, the teachers seem to be thinking along the same line as Hermione. They piled so much homework on them that the Easter holiday weren't nearly as much fun as the Christmas one. It was hard to relax when Hermione next to you and reciting the 12 uses of dragon blood or practicing wand movement. Moaning and yawning, Harry and Ron spent most of their free time in the library with her, trying to get through all their extra work. I'll never remember this, Ron burst out one afternoon, throwing down his quill and looking longingly out of the library window. It was the first really fine day that they had in months. The sky was clear, forget-me-not blue, and there was a feeling in the air summer coming. Harry, who was looking up Divinity and 1,000 magical herb and fungi, didn't look up until he had heard Ron say, Hagrid, what are you doing in the library? Hagrid shuffled in his view, hiding something behind his back. He looked very out of place in the Morgan's overcoat. Just look in, he said in a shifty voice that he got into their interest at once. And what you lot up to? He looked suddenly suspicious. You're not still looking for Nicholas Flamel, are you? Oh, we found out he is age ago, said Ron impressively. And we know what the doc already. It's Philosopher said Hagrid, looking around quickly to see if anyone was listening. Don't go shouting about it. What's the matter with you? There are a few things we wanted to ask you, as a matter of fact, said Harry, about what's guarding the stone, apart from Fluffy. Shh, said Hagrid again. Listen, come and see me later. I'm not promising I'll tell you anything, mind, but don't go rabbiting above it here. Students are supposed to know. They'll think I've still told you. See you later, then, said Harry. Hagrid shuffled off. What was he hiding behind his back? Said Hermione thoughtfully. Do you think it had been anything to do with a stone? I'm going to see what section he was in, said Ron. He'd had enough of work. Who'd had enough of work? He came back a minute later with a pile of books in his arm and slammed them down the table. Dragons, he whispered. Hagrid was looking up step from dragon. Look at these. Dragon species of Great Britain and Ireland from egg to infro, a dragon keeper guide. Hagrid always wanted a dragon. He told me so the first time I ever met him. But it's against our law, said Ron. Dragon breeding was outlawed by the Warlocks Convention of 1809. Everyone know that. It's hard to stop Muggle noticing us if we're keeping Dragon in the back garden. Anyway, you can't tame Dragon. It's dangerous. You should see the burn Charlie got off Wild One in Romania. But there are wild dragon in Britain, said Harry. Of course there are, said Ron. Common Welsh green and Herberian blacks. The Ministry of Magic has a job hushing them up, I can tell you. I'll lots of putting spell on muggles who have spotted them to make them forget. So what's on earth Hagrid up to? Said Hermione. When they knock up on the door of the gamekeeper hut an hour later, they're surprised to see that all curtains were closed. Hagrid called, "Who is it?" before he let them in, and then shut the door quickly behind him. It was stiflingly hot inside. Even though it was such a warm day, there was a blazing fire in the grate. Hagrid made them tea and offered them toast sandwich, which they refused. "So, you wanted to ask me something?" "Yes," said Harry. "There is no point being about the bush. We were wondering if you could tell us what's guarding the Philosopher's Stone apart from Fluffy." Hagrid frowned him. "Of course I can," he said. "Number one, I don't know myself. Number two, you know too much already, so I wouldn't tell you if I could. That stone here for a good reason. It was almost stolen out of Richard. I suppose to have worked that out and all. Beat me. How you even know about Fluffy? Oh, come on, Hagrid. You might not tell us, but you do. No, you know everything that goes on round here," said Hermione in a warm, flattering voice. Hagrid beard twitched, and they could tell he was smiling. He only wondered who had done that guarding, really. Hermione went on. "We wonder who Dumbledore had trust enough to help him apart from you." Hagrid just swelled out these last words. Harry and Ron beamed at Hermione. "Well, I don't suppose it could hurt to tell you that. Let's see. He borrowed Fluffy from me. Then some of the other teachers did enchantment. Professor Prout, Professor Flitwick, Professor McGonagall. He ticked them off on his finger. Professor Quirrell and Dumbledore himself did something, of course. Hang on, I've forgotten something. Someone. Oh yeah, Professor Snape." "Snape? Yeah. You're not still on about that, are you? Look, Snape helped protect the stone. He's not about to steal it." Harry knew Ron and Hermione were thinking the same as he was. If Snape had been in the protecting the stone, it must have been easy to find out how the other teacher had guarded it. He probably knew everything except it's seen Quirrell's spell and how to get past Fluffy. "You're the only one who know how to get past Fluffy, aren't you, Hagrid?" said Harry anxiously. "And you wouldn't tell anyone, would you? Not even one of the teachers? Not a soul? "No, except me and Dumbledore," said Hagrid proudly. "Well, that's something," Harry muttered the other. "Hagrid, can we have a window open? I'm boiling." "Can't, Harry. Sorry," said Hagrid. Harry noticed that he glanced at the fire. Hagrid looked at it, too. "Hagrid, what's that?" But he already knew what it was. It was a very heart from the fire. Underneath the kettle was a huge black egg. "Ah," said Hagrid, fiddling nervously with his spear. "That's, where did you get it?" "Get it, Hagrid," said Ron, crouching over the fire to get a closer look at the egg. "It must have cost you a fortune." "Won it," said Hagrid. "Last night, I was down the village having a few drinks and got into a game of cards with a stranger. Then he was quite glad to get rid of it, to be honest." "But what are you going to do with it when it hatched?" said Hermione. "Well, I've been doing some reading," said Hagrid, pulling a large book from under his pillow. "Got this out of the library. Dragon Breeding for Pleasure and Profit. It's a bit out of date, of course, but it's all in here. Keep the egg in the fire, because their mother breathed on him. See? And when it hatched, feed it on the bucket of brandy mixed with chicken blood every half hour. And see here, how to recognize different egg. And that's what I got. There's a Northern Ridgeback. They're rare, them." He looked very pleased with himself, but Hermione didn't. "Hagrid, you live in a wooden house," she said. But Hagrid wasn't listening. He was humming merrily as he stoked the fire. So now they had something else to worry about. What might happen to Hagrid if anyone found out he was hiding an illegal dragon in his hut? Wonder what it's like to have a peaceful life. Ron's sign as evening after evening they struggled through extra homework they were getting. Hermione had now started a revision timetable for Harry and Ron too. It was driving them mad. Then one breakfast time, Hedwig brought Harry another note from Hagrid. He had written only 2 words. It's hatching. Ron wanted to skip herbology to go straight down to the hut. Hermione wouldn't hear of it. Hermione, how many times in our life are we going to see a dragon hatching? We've got a lesson. We'll get into trouble, and that's nothing to do, and that's nothing what Hagrid going to keep. That's nothing to what Hagrid going to be, and when someone find out what he's doing, shut up, Harry whispered. Malfoy was only few feet away, and he had stopped dead to listen. How much he heard, he didn't like the look of Malfoy's face at all. Ron and Hermione argue all the way to herbology, and Hermione agreed to run down to Hagrid with the other two. During the morning break, when the bell sounded the castle at the end of their lesson, the three of them dropped their trowel at once and hurried through the ground at the edge of the forest. Hagrid greeted them looking flushed and excited. It's nearly out, he ushered them inside. The egg was lying on the table. It's nearly out, he ushered them inside. The egg was lying on the table. There were a deep crack in. Something was moving inside. A funny clicking noise was coming from it. They all drew their chairs up to the table and watched the batted breathe. All at once, there was a scraping noise, and the egg split open. The baby dragon fell on the table. It wasn't looking exactly. It wasn't exactly pretty. Harry thought it like a crumpled black umbrella. Its spinny wings were huge compared to its skinny jet body, and it had a long snout with a wide nostril, stub of horn and bulging orange eyes. It sneezed. A couple of sparks flew out of his snout. Isn't he beautiful? Isn't he beautiful? Hagrid mumbled. He reached out a hand and to stroke the dragon head. It snapped at his finger, showing pointed fang. Bless him! Look, he knows Mummy, said Hagrid. Hagrid, said Hermione. How fast do Norwegian Ridgeback grow exactly? Hagrid said. Hagrid was about to answer when the color suddenly drained from his face. He leapt to his feet and ran to the window. What's the matter? Someone's looking through the gap in the curtain. It's a kid. He's running back to the school. Harry bolted the door and looked out. Even distant, there was no mistaking him. Malfoy had seen the dragon. Something about the smile lurking in Malfoy's face during the next week made Harry, Ron, and Hermione very nervous. They spent most of their free time in Hagrid's darkened hut trying to reason with him. Just let him go, Harry urged. Set him free. I can't, said Hagrid. He's too little. He'll die. They looked at the dragon. It had grown 3 times in length in just a week. Smoke kept lurching out of his nostril. Hagrid hadn't been doing his gamekeeping duties because the dragon was keeping him so busy. There were empty brandy bottle and chicken feather all over the floor. I decided to call him Norbert, said Hagrid, looking at the dragon with misty eyes. He really know me now. Watch, Norbert, where's Mummy? He lost his marble, Ron muttered in Harry's ears. Hagrid, said Harry loudly, give it a fortnight, and Norbert going to be as long to be as long as her house is. Malfoy could go to Dumbledore at any moment. Hagrid bit his lip. I, I, I know I can't keep him forever, but I can just dump him. I can't. Harry suddenly turned to Ron. Charlie, he said. You're losing it too, said Ron. I'm Ron, remember? No, Charlie. Your brother Charlie in Romania, studying dragon. We could send Norbert to him. Charlie can take care of him and then put it back in the wild. Brilliant, said Ron. How about it, Hagrid? And in the end, brilliant, said Ron. How about it, Hagrid? But in the end, Hagrid agreed that they could send an owl to Charlie to ask him. The following week dragged by. Wednesday night found Hermione and Harry sitting alone in the common room long after everyone else had gone to bed, and the clock on the wall had just chimed midnight. When the portrait hole burst open, Ron appeared out of nowhere as he pulled off Harry's invisibility cloak. He had been down Hagrid's hut, helping him feed Norbert, who was now eating dead rat by the crate. It bit me, he said, showing off his hand, which was wrapped in a bloody handkerchief. I'm not going to be able to hold the quill for a week. I tell you, that dragon, the most horrible animal I've ever met. But the way Hagrid goes on about it, you'd think it was a fluffy little bunny rabbit. When it bit me, he told me for frightening it, and when I left, he was singing a lullaby. There was a tap on the dark window. It's Hedwig, said Harry, hurrying on to let her in. She'll have Charlie answer. The three of them put their heads together to read the note. Dear Ron, how are you? Thanks for the letter. I would be glad to take the Norwegian Ridge back, but it won't be easy getting him here. I think the best thing will be to send him over with some friend of mine who are coming to visit me next week. Trouble is, they mustn't be carrying an illegal dragon. Could you get the Ridgeback up the tallest tower at midnight on Saturday? They can meet you there and take him away while it's still dark. Send me an answer as soon as possible. Love, Charlie. They look at each other. We've got an invisibility cloak, said Harry. It shouldn't be too difficult. I think the cloak big enough to cover two of us. And Norbert's. It was a mark of how bad last week had been that the other two agreed with him. Anything to get rid of Norbert and Malfoy. There was a hitch, but the next morning, Ron's bitten hand was swollen to twice its usual size. He didn't know whether it was safe to go to Madame Pomfrey because she'd recognize it. Would she recognize a dragon bite? By the afternoon, though he had no choice, the cut had turned a nasty shade of green. It looked as if Norbert's thing were poisonous. Harry and Hermione rushed to the hospital wing at the end of the day to find Ron in a terrible state in bed. It's just not my hand, he whispered, although that feel like it's about to fall off. Malfoy told Madame Pomfrey he wanted to borrow one of my books so he could come and have a good laugh at me. I kept threatening to tell her that really bit of... I don't think I've told her it was dog bite, but I don't think she believed me. I should have him at the Quidditch match. That's why he's doing it. Harry and Hermione try to calm Ron down. It'll all over at midnight on Saturday, said Hermione. But that didn't soothe Ron up at all. On the contrary, he sat bolt upright and broke in a sweat. Midnight on Saturday, he said in a hoarse voice, Oh no, oh no. I've just remembered. Charlie Letter was in that book Malfoy took. He's going to know we're going to get rid of Norbert. Harry and Hermione didn't get a chance to answer. Madame Pomfrey came over at that moment and made them leave, saying Ron needed sleep. It's too late to change the plan now, Harry told Hermione, who haven't got time to send Charlie another owl, and this could be our only chance to get rid of Norbert. We'll have to risk it. And we have got the invisibility cloak. Malfoy doesn't know about that. They found Fang, the boardhouse, sitting aside the bandaged Teal when they went to Hagrid, who opened a window to talk to them.